The 6,586th meeting of the Security Council is called to order. The provisional agenda for this meeting is the situation concerning Iraq. The agenda is adopted. In accordance with Rule 37 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite the representative of Iraq to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. In accordance with Rule 39 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite Mr. Ed Melkert, Special Representative of the Secretary General and Head of the United Nations Assistant Mission to Iraq, to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. The Security Council will now begin its consideration of item 2 of the agenda. I wish to draw the attention of the Council members to document S/2011/435, third report of the Secretary General, pursuant to paragraph 6 of Resolution 1936 of 2010. I now give the floor to Mr. Melkert.
Thank you, Mr. President, Excellencies. Thank you for this opportunity to introduce the Secretary General's latest report on the activities of the United Nations Assistance Mission for Iraq, UNAMI. This comes at an important time when the Council will be considering UNAMI's mandate renewal next week. Are you optimistic or are you pessimistic? Has been the question I have been asked most by many. As we know, events tend to shape intents, at least as much as the other way around. In most of what I've witnessed in Iraq, there is ground for cautious optimism, provided that determined leadership within the country and a stronger spirit of cooperation in the region with Iraq prevail. In some important aspects, Iraq is at the heart of fundamental changes in the region. The Iraqi system of government incorporates a power-sharing constitution, guaranteeing participation of women and minorities, and nurturing a culture of ongoing constitutional debate. Regular elections have taken place, conducted in line with international standards. While drawn out, government formation has indeed progressed. Meanwhile, Parliament is taking an increasingly important role in decision-making. And in departure from decades of authoritarian regime, negotiations between all parties have become the predominant feature of political life. In the words of Foreign Minister Zabari, speaking of Iraq and the wider region, I quote, "The time of the single-party state and the ruling party is over. This era is at an end." In the slipstream of events in the region, demonstrations have been recognized as a legitimate way to express opinions or grievances, although all too often the practice of freedom of expression is put under considerable pressure. Still, the government and the Council of Representatives have embarked on a true debate about the policies that need to be put in place in order to modernize infrastructure and the economy, improve social services delivery, and combat institutional lethargy and corruption. Iraq's economy, meanwhile, continues to grow at a rate of over 10%, with oil revenues at a higher level than projected, and updates on proven reserves reconfirming Iraq's prominence in global oil production for a long time to come. Total foreign direct investment in 2010 increased by almost 50% against the previous year, up to a level of just over $42 billion. Areas that have benefited include construction, transportation, electricity, industry, oil and gas, water and sanitation, health and agriculture. At the same time, Iraq's poverty index remains high at 22.9%. Such inequality poses an instability risk for the future. These political and economic facts matter in a country that has suffered much during 3 decades of wars and oppression. Reconstruction, institution building, and bringing back knowledge all take time. There are also setbacks as armed opposition groups continue to try to undo positive developments, most notably by waves of kidnappings and assassinations targeting civil servants, holders of political office, academics, doctors, and activists, undoubtedly impacting state and society building at this crucial time. These and other acts of violence that unfortunately have not subsided in recent months emphasize once more the need for determined, jointly shared political action against the perpetrators, wherever they may derive their support from. Consolidating and further strengthening the undisputable gains will require a keen understanding of the need to resolve pending issues. The key to this remains the implementation of the November 2010 Erbil Agreement that brought the signatures of Prime Minister al-Maliki, KRG President Barzani, and Iraqi leader Alawi together under an agreed power-sharing arrangement. As appointments of ministers in the security ministries are still pending and the National Council for Strategic Policies has not yet been formed, there is understandable concern whether the post-election spirit could prevail. In this context, as stressed in the report before you, the Secretary-General calls on Iraqi political leaders to put aside their differences and move swiftly to agree on the way forward. It is important to note that on 10 July, all leaders of the main political blocs met at the invitation of President Talabani in order to step up efforts to revitalize the spirit of consensus and look at ways to implement the Erbil Agreement. Discussions also focused on the issue of the expiration of the bilateral status of forces agreement between Iraq and the United States. However, indications in my most recent meetings do not provide ground for optimism about a breakthrough anytime soon. Another issue that would benefit from consensus between parties is the mandate and selection of the next independent High Electoral Commission in the course of next year. UNAMI stands ready to advise the Council of Representatives on the procedure that will be essential to consolidate the independence and standards for organizing elections in the coming period. I am pleased to report that UNAMI has continued to facilitate dialogue within the framework of the Standing Consultative Mechanism. Importantly, interaction between key leaders within Kirkuk province has been positively impacted by a new power-sharing arrangement between key representatives of the Kurdish, Arab and Turkmen components. Furthermore, UNAMI hosted all Council of Representative members elected in Kirkuk as part of ongoing consultations concerning the conditions that would enable the delayed provincial council elections to take place in the near future. Discussions have further focused on power sharing in Nineveh, the conditions for conducting a census, and the future of the combined security mechanism, which, under USFI auspices, has contributed significantly to the cooperation and coordination between the Iraqi security forces and the Peshmerga. Maintaining security stability is important in the short run, provided that genuine efforts are undertaken to address the underlying issues which have been the source of political controversy. The mission is committed to helping stakeholders find common ground and mutually acceptable solutions on these and other issues, which will resolve the status of Kirkuk and other disputed areas. It is of great interest to Iraq and to the international community that these overall positive experiences will be consolidated and strengthened. With that purpose in mind, I visited the coordination centers of the Combined Security Mechanism in the provinces of Kirkuk, Nineveh and Diyala in order to enable UNAMI to advise and assist, as per its mandate, the government of Iraq and the Kurdistan Regional Government on the future of the mechanism and the possibility of continued international engagement if requested. Whilst Iraq's internal affairs continue to require additional efforts to strengthen stability, the regional context requires attention as well. With Kuwait, Iraq shares not only a border, but also a history and a future. Earlier this year, a breakthrough was achieved as a consequence of the mutual visits by the respective prime ministers and the subsequent work on a comprehensive bilateral agenda under the auspices of their foreign ministers. Their decision to form a joint ministerial committee is an important step towards finding viable solutions to their outstanding bilateral concerns, including those that recently have generated public discussions. Notwithstanding these bilateral efforts, which I wish success, as indicated in the Secretary-General's report, Iraq needs to demonstrate to the Council tangible and expeditious progress in implementing its outstanding Chapter 7 obligations pertaining to Kuwait. These include missing Kuwaiti persons and property, as well as the Iraq-Kuwait boundary maintenance project and citizens' relocation. Also, the Secretary-General has consistently urged the Iraqi Prime Minister that a letter from his side reaffirming Iraq's commitments to its land and maritime boundaries with Kuwait under Security Council Resolution 833, 1993, is an essential confidence-building measure. In this context, both I and the Secretary-General's high-level coordinator remain committed to assisting Iraq and Kuwait in bringing closure to these long-standing Security Council mandates. The implementation of the UN Development Assistance Framework formulated to support the National Development Plan remains ongoing with two main pillars: a US $33 million private sector development program and a $55 million public sector one. Noteworthy in this context is the essential support that UNFPA provided recently to the government in the successful completion of the dwelling and household part of the census. On the human rights front, several initiatives were launched at the national and regional levels. Early June, the draft National Action Plan on Human Rights was discussed at a conference hosted by Prime Minister al-Maliki at the Council of Representatives. During the discussions, over 100 recommendations were incorporated into the plan. They cover issues affecting women's rights, children's rights, minorities, rule of law, freedom of expression, internally displaced persons, and refugees. In the Kurdistan region, its parliament adopted the law on combating domestic violence in the Kurdistan region of Iraq. While these are positive developments, efforts must continue to ensure that fundamental rights and freedoms are protected, notably with regard to the role of the media, as well as conditions in detention facilities are in accordance with international conventions. For UNAMI, last week was an historic week of transition from years of support by US forces to enhanced cooperation with the Iraqi security forces. And I would like to commend the government for its strong commitment to the protection of UN staff. At the completion of a 2-year period as the guest of the Iraqi people, I'd like to take the liberty to conclude with some personal observations. From the international perspective, there is every reason for strongly welcoming the return of Iraq as a full and respected member of the international community. As historically all parts of Iraq are inseparably connected with their neighbors, it remains true that what goes well in Iraq will be of tremendous benefit to the wider region. Steady economic development in Iraq will reinforce regional and international stability. Addressing major political, social and economic challenges could significantly contribute to reducing the space for extremism, including by distributing Iraq's wealth more fairly amongst its people. Conversely, it is true that what goes well in the region is of benefit to Iraq as well. Sustained engagement by the international community will help create the space to tap into the vast potential of a more diversified and integrated economic development and the level of social progress that will ultimately define the future of the region. Underscoring what the Secretary-General has stated in his report, I therefore urge all countries in the region to step up their engagement with Iraq with a view to quickly resolving outstanding differences and identifying concrete areas of cooperation in the political, security and developmental fields that could be mutually beneficial for all concerned. UNAMI, with the support of the Security Council, is prepared to do all it can to support such efforts. Looking inside Iraq, I have been privileged to witness the genuine progress that has been made to replace a horrific past of ethnic confrontation by a future where coexistence and common interest define the interaction between Arabs and Kurds. For Iraq and for the wider region, it is truly significant to note achievements in the Kurdistan region that are a great asset to stability and confidence building. This generates hope that common sense will prevail in addressing still significant but not insurmountable issues regarding the disputed areas, including Kirkuk. The key will be the readiness of all parties to respect mutual concerns of past confrontation and injustices, while substituting these by the recognition that pluralism should be recognized in power-sharing arrangements serving the common interest. As long as parties in Iraq consider this helpful, I would strongly recommend maintaining international engagement so as to facilitate the processes that may gradually transform disputes into mutually acceptable solutions. Real progress has also been achieved in replacing a ruthless dictatorship by institutions and representatives mandated by constitutional principles and practice. Whilst many challenges remain to ingrain human rights and democracy fundamentals into the minds and acts of all stakeholders, it is hard to see that the change could be reversed. The change, however, has come at an extreme cost, still visible and tangible on a daily basis in the victims and the damage despite 8 years that have gone by. Developments in the region are showing that change must and eventually will come primarily from the inside. The new Iraq will only be a real opportunity for all Iraqis if their leaders will be decisive in their action, allies will not turn away in their support, and its sovereignty will be respected. For the foreseeable future, the UN will be well placed to remain a trusted partner in this endeavor. In conclusion, I would like to thank the government of Iraq, including Ambassador al-Bayati, the Security Council and the Secretary General, for the confidence they have vested in me over the past 2 years in support of my efforts as Special Representative of the Secretary General to carry out the important mandate entrusted to UNAMI. I also thank the brave and able staff of UNAMI and the UN country team for their efforts in supporting the people of Iraq under difficult and challenging conditions. Thank you very much.
I thank Mr. Melkert for his briefing, and I now give the floor to the representative of Iraq.
Thank you. Mr. President, allow me at the outset to congratulate you for assuming the presidency of the Security Council for this month. I would like to extend my thanks to the previous Security Council President, His Excellency, the Permanent Representative of Gabon, for his efforts during the month of June. I would also like to thank Mr. Ed Malkat, Special Representative of the Secretary General in Iraq, and his team in Baghdad and New York for their sincere efforts in helping the Iraqi people and the Iraqi government. The political and security situation in Iraq has witnessed a huge development after the success of the Iraqi parliamentary elections, which was held in March 2010, with large participation from all the components of the Iraqi people. This election resulted in forming a national partnership government from all the political blocs that won in the elections, which strengthened the democratic process and achieved more security and stability. The next stage, which will follow the withdrawal of the American forces at the end of this year, will put immense challenges and responsibilities on the Iraqi government. From a security perspective, the Iraqi government is continuing to improve the ability of its security forces in a way that prepares those forces to stand in the face of terrorist attacks, protect internal security, and defend democracy in Iraq. The Iraqi government will work on the optimum implementation of the strategic framework agreement with the United States and the partnership agreement with the European Union, which will hopefully be signed during this year. The Iraqi government will benefit from the expertise of the NATO on building the military capabilities and according to Security Council Resolution 1546 in 2004. Mr. President, on 27 March 2011, the Iraqi Prime Minister, Mr. Nouri al-Maliki, launched the 100 Days Initiative, and the goal was to put the government institution on the right path to enable them to improve their performance, to identify the strength point in order to improve them, and to identify the weakness points in order to treat them. This initiative coincided with a paper for the administrative, political, and services reforms, as well as fighting unemployment that was approved by the Council of Ministers. The Prime Minister also decided to establish a coordination committee for the 100 Days Initiative, chaired by the Secretary General of the Council of Ministers, to prepare a report on the results of the work performed by the ministries. The Prime Minister pointed out in a televised speech to the Iraqi people on June 23, 2011, that the results show that the general index and the final results extracted from the 100 Days plan showed that most ministries' performance was between average and good. Although the performance of quite a few ministries was weak and not at an acceptable level, and a series of actions will be adopted, such as the following. 1, to trim down the government and all non-essential and honorary positions, which became an urgent need according to all indicators. 2, a change in number of ministries on the minister level. 3, to conduct a professional evaluation to implement changes in the staff of a number of ministries on the level of deputy ministers, advisors, and general directors. 4, to continue the process of monitoring and evaluation to the point reached by the 100 Days Initiative and will continue at an accelerated pace. Mr. President, the Iraqi government was able to achieve advanced steps in the issue of national reconciliation through ending the case of dissolved entities and through integrating them in society within the framework of justice and accountability law. The government also adopted the subject of Sons of Iraq, or what's so-called the Awakening Council, and integrating 45% of them in the different ministries until now. Tribal councils were established for tribal reforms and avoiding conflicts to achieve convergence among the different components of the Iraqi society in order to break the barriers put by terrorists between the sons of the country. The government also supports religious conferences held to bring closer the different views of the Iraqis. The government was also open to armed groups who surrender their weapons and to converge with the rest of the Iraqi people under the tent of Iraq. In addition to that, the government prepared the general atmosphere for reconciliation through spreading the culture of understanding and move on the Ministry of Education and Ministry of Culture and religious endowments to change some schools' curriculum to spread the culture of love and harmony between Iraqis. Mr. President, Regarding the development field, the Iraqi government has coordinated its efforts with its international partners to implement the contents of the National Development Plan for the 5 years from 2010 to 2014. The plan includes about 2,700 strategic projects in many fields, which with the cost of reaching to $186 billion in an effort to accomplish a quantum leap in the Iraqi economy and improving services provided to the citizens. The system to manage Iraqi human developments was recently finished to support and follow up on the implementation of the plan in a time when the government is working on implementing ambitious development plan to build a strong economy that encourages investments and provide the appropriate legislative atmosphere to protect investors and their capitals. This coincided with the Prime Minister's assertion that the Iraqi government is committed to its obligation in reforming the Iraqi economy by adopting the free market policy, along with accomplishing the necessary legislative reforms needed in different sectors, and also through giving the private sector the attention necessary to take its part in the economic development process. Also, the Iraqi oil sector is witnessing stability with an average export of around 2 million barrels a day and an average production of more than 2.5 million barrels a day. The Iraqi government is still working to implement the national plan to improve Iraqi oil industry, which aims to reach a production level of 12 million barrels per day in 2017. Regarding the Iraqi government's effort to solve the housing problem, the Iraqi government signed a contract on 25 May 2011 with the Korean company Hanwha to build 100,000 units in Baghdad province. The government also signed a memorandum of understanding with the United Nations Habitat on 31 May 2011, the organization in charge of human settlement issues. Mr. President, regarding the subject of census, while attending the celebration of International Day for Population organized by the Ministry of Planning, the Prime Minister reaffirmed that the Iraqi government is committed to reaching an agreement to conduct the census because it's not possible to build a real estate on scientific basis unless a general population census is conducted to survey all the needs as well as the available capacities and capabilities. The Prime Minister added that the census is a national development project that secures the needs of ministries and private institutions for the statistics necessary to planning and development, and that the government has provided the necessary support for the census project and the technical and professional preparation necessary to ensure its success. Mr. President, the new Iraq has paid special attention to issues of human rights through the foundation of credible, independent national mechanisms in charge of monitoring the situation of human rights in Iraq and to ensure its protection. Therefore, the Iraqi High Commission for Human Rights was established, and nominations were being accepted last April for its councils, which consist of 11 members. This council will enjoy wide authority in monitoring the situation of human rights in Iraq. In the same context, in June 2011, a conference was held to discuss the recommendations of the United Nations Human Rights Council with the support of Prime Minister Mr. Nouri al-Maliki and the participation of Mr. Ed Melkat, the Special Representative of the Secretary General in Iraq. Representatives from several international organizations, ambassadors, and members of the diplomatic corps in Baghdad also attended. The conference called on achieving a national plan for human rights and to teach human rights in schools and universities. One of the main priorities for the Iraqi government also is improving the education sector, as the government adopted a wide program to improve curricula, to build schools and universities, and to send Iraqi students to other countries to study as part of educational initiative. Mr. President, on April 7, 2011, the Ashraf camp, which is occupied by the Iranian organization Mujahideen-e-Khalq, witnessed security events after the Iraqi security forces and anti-riot forces attempted to establish government control in the northeastern part of the camp, which include farmlands belonging to the Iraqi citizens. The Iraqi forces were subject to an attack with fire bombs and knives, which led to clashes. A number of the camp residents were killed and injured, and 7 members of the Iraqi forces also injured. The security forces were not aiming to take over the camp or removing its residents by force. Here, I would like to point out that since 7th of April 2011, the Iraqi government has allowed representatives from the UN mission in Iraq and many international organizations to enter the camp to deliver food and medicine to its residents. The government also expressed its willingness to start a government investigation regarding those events. However, this organization considers the camp as liberated and holy territories for it and refuses to leave, which is a stark challenge to Iraq's sovereignty. The organization leadership is interfering in Iraq's internal affairs, calling publicly to overthrow the Iraqi government and keeping inciting against it. This organization is considered a terrorist organization in the United States and was considered as a terrorist group in Europe until it was lifted from the European list of terrorist organizations. It is also one of the organizations that collaborated with the former regime of Saddam Hussein and acted as one of its repressive tools against the Iraqi people. Therefore, the Iraqi government made the decision to guarantee the exit of members of this group from Iraq by the end of 2011 and to work on their resettlement and guaranteeing their human rights. Mr. President, Iraq has suffered from a long time from sanctions put on it because of its represented a threat to international peace and security after Saddam's invasion to Kuwait in 1990. However, after 2003, Iraq has proven without any doubt that it does not represent a threat to international peace and security anymore. Iraq supports the international effort aimed to control arms and supports disarmament to serve the goals of the United Nations in keeping international peace and security. On August 19, 2008, Iraq joined the agreement to prevent nuclear test ban and also signed on February 12, 2009, an agreement to prohibit, create, produce, and store chemical weapons. On November 12, 2009, Iraq also signed an agreement banning the use, development, and transport of cluster ammunition. On August 11, 2010, Iraq also signed the Hague Code of Conduct to prevent the spread of ballistic missiles. In addition to that, Iraq chaired the substantive session of the Disarmament Commission held from 4th to 21st of April 2011, which resulted in enforcing the momentum of the bilateral and the group negotiation in terms of nuclear disarmament. This represents a clear Iraqi message that Iraq is no longer a threat for international peace and security, but rather Iraq is an important and effective country in the international efforts to spread international peace and security in our world. Mr. President, on the regional level, the Arab world is witnessing a wave of political changes and reforms movements that prove the rightness of Iraq's political direction in terms of achieving political change and adopting democracy, elections, and peaceful transition of power as a way of governing. I would like to point out that Iraq, and during the discussion related to the developments and modernization in the Arab world in 2004, expressed the importance of activating the mechanisms of the Joint Arab Mechanism to deepen the foundations of democracy and to expand the participation of the masses in the political sector and in making the national decisions, and to continue the economic reforms to elevate the living conditions of Arab nations, to provide social justice, to assert the importance of women's role in the society, supporting her rights, and empowering women in the society, and many other important matters. If these points were taken with seriousness and foresight, maybe we would have avoided many of the implications happening in the Arab world arena now. Mr. President, due to Iraq's belief in the importance of taking its leadership role in the Arab joint work and its joint mechanisms, in the forefront of which is the Arab League Summit, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Hoshar Zibari, delivered to the Secretary General of the Arab League a letter that expressed Iraq's request to postpone the summit of the Arab League that was scheduled to be held in Baghdad during May 2011 to its regular timing in March of 2011. That is because of the situation and the political developments in the Arab world, which is still escalating along with its implications. The Iraqi government sees that timing is not appropriate to hold the Arab League summit in the current stage. However, Iraq is reserving its right to host the Arab summit in Baghdad in the mentioned date. The General Secretariat of the Arab League issued an official statement on May 5, 2011, stating that the summit has been postponed upon an official request from Iraq, while reserving the right to host a summit in Baghdad and leading the helm of the joint Arab work for a full year from the date of holding the next summit. Mr. President, as a result of Iraq's openness on all countries of the world, the past period has seen many visits of foreign officers to Baghdad. The Speaker of U.S. House of Representatives, Mr. John Boehner, visited Baghdad on April 16, 2011. Mr. Marzouk Ali, the President of the Indonesian Parliament, visited Baghdad on May 3, 2011. The leader of the Democratic Bloc, Nancy Pelosi, in the U.S. Congress, visited Baghdad on May 5th. Mr. John McCain also visited Iraq along with a delegation from the U.S. Congress on May 9th. The Foreign Minister of Russia, Mr. Sergei Lavrov, visited Baghdad on May 10. Mr. Ali Akbar Saleh, the Iranian Foreign Minister, also visited Iraq on May 11th. The Prime Minister of Czech Republic, Mr. Peter Natchez, visited Baghdad on May 23rd. Mr. Ma'ruf al-Bakhaid, the Jordanian Prime Minister, visited Baghdad on June 1st. Mr. Lim Pasco, the Assistant Secretary General for Political Affairs, also visited Iraq on June 11th. And on the other hand, the Iraqi Prime Minister, Mr. Nouri al-Maliki, visited the Republic of South Korea on April 27, 2011. During the visit, he met with South Korean President, Mr. Lee Myung-bak, and Mr. Park Hae-tae, the Speaker of the Parliament. The Iraqi Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Hoshazi Bari, participated as the head of the Iraqi delegation at the ministerial level meeting of the non-aligned movement held in Bali on May 23 to 27. In the meeting, he delivered a statement in which he expressed Iraq's desire in opening collaboration channels in the field of investments, which will enforce the ties of cooperation between Iraq and the countries of the movement. He also expressed the hope of the Iraqi government in activating its role at working level with regional and international organizations, especially within the framework of the non-aligned movement. Mr. Hoshazi Bari also headed Iraq's delegation that participated in the 83rd work session of the meeting of the Organization of the Islamic States held in Astana on June 28 to 30, 2011. Mr. President, on December 15, 2010, this esteemed council hosted a historical meeting on Iraq, in which three important resolutions were adopted, which are Resolution 1956, 1957, and 1958. These resolutions represented the end of sanctions and restrictions imposed on Iraq as a result of the crimes of Saddam regime. The Iraqi government is working on following up on those three resolutions adopted by the Security Council. The Iraqi government has started a consultation with the United Nations Secretariat to formulate a memorandum of understanding regarding the implementation of paragraph 7 of 1958 resolution relating to ending the oil for food program. Iraq presented the fourth and last report to the Security Council in the month of April 2011 regarding the successor arrangement of the DFI. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs is following up on the subject of ratifying the additional protocol of the IEA as part of its commitment to Security Council Resolution 1957. Mr. President, the government of Iraq, as part of its commitment to enforce its relation with the state of Kuwait, has expressed an absolute cooperation on different levels to solve all the outstanding issues. The Joint Ministerial Committee held a meeting in March 2010, chaired by the March 2011, chaired by the Ministers of Foreign Affairs of both countries. Iraq has emphasized the principle of joint management of the navigational channel in Khor Abdullah and the respect of what the report of the specialized committee in charge of marking the borders regarding the freedom of navigation. I would like to point out my government's position regarding the issue of missing Kuwaitis and Kuwaiti properties, as it was mentioned in the letter to the Secretary General of the United Nations from the Iraqi Minister of Foreign Affairs dated July 5, 2011, which is not to extend the mandate of the high-level coordinator when it expires on 31st December 2011, and to depend on the mechanisms of the tripartite technical committee and the suggestion mentioned in the minister letters to the Secretary General dated November 26, 2010, to establish a technical team in the Kuwaiti Embassy in Baghdad, which was welcomed by all members of the Security Council, as it was mentioned in the Security Council press statement dated December 17, 2010. Through this, we could work a better way to serve the interests of our two countries. The Foreign Minister asserted in his letter that the government of Iraq is completely serious in solving all of the outstanding issues with the state of Kuwait and is proving that it is taking the necessary steps to implement the related Security Council resolutions. Iraq realizes that the subject of trust building originates from the desire of both countries to improve their relation in order to serve the interests of both the Iraqi and the Kuwaiti peoples. Finally, I would like to affirm my government's appreciation for the role played by the United Nations mission to assist Iraq and for the efforts of the Special Representative of the Secretary General, Mr. Ed Melkat, in providing the backing and support requested by the Iraqi government in accordance with mechanisms agreed upon by the two parties. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Iraq for his statement. There are no further speakers inscribed on my list. I now invite members to informal consultations to continue our discussion on this subject. The meeting is adjourned.